Lord Jones, one of the things that you have said is that politicians and business should have a kind of mutual suspicion. But would that be healthy for Britain's economy?
I don't think it's right that business sees itself as a superior or better part of society. But I do think it is important that people understand how important it is. Because unless you have a business environment that throws off profit, and I know some politicians think that's a dirty word, but unless you do get it, you don't get jobs and you don't get tax. And if you don't get tax, you don't get jobs in the public sector either. That's why business is so important. And 99.9% of the good quality, hard-working, risk-taking businesswomen and businessmen in this country don't identify with banks who are at it or energy companies who are at it. They don't identify with the people that Ed Miliband at the moment, for instance, is putting up there as, aren't these people awful? And it does worry me that whether it's an inward investor sitting in a boardroom in Detroit or Dubai or Shanghai or Mumbai or somewhere, or whether it is a kid at 16 thinking, shall I go into a career in business? Or if it's somebody coming out of college or university thinking, what shall I do? It does worry me that there's this creation of mood music. It's not about specific policy, you see. Many business people would pay a bit extra in tax, actually. If you prick us, do we bleed? You know, there's quite a bit of that in this. A lot of business people will sympathise with a lot of the views and policies of different parties. It's the mood music. It's this feeling, this perception that every business person is at it. It's not just politicians. I mean, you know, what business person actually gets out of a Rolls Royce and screams, "You're fired" at young people? You know, when you see a plot on Corrie or on EastEnders, the one who's bent or crooked is always a business person. You know, that society is giving business people an unfair, hard time. And if we don't watch it in a globalised competitive environment, what you end up with is an uncompetitive society, and therefore less revenue, therefore less tax, therefore fewer schools and hospitals. And in terms of a legacy to children and grandchildren and their children, what you end up with is a diminishing, ever-decreasing circle. And the moment you get that, you don't, it's a vortex, you don't get out of it.
So Britain becomes like France?
Well, I was heard to say the other day, you know, please, Mr. Miliband, don't make my country be like France. And we all know the wonderful things the French people are capable of, but at the moment, they've got such an anti-business culture, and they've got such a tax them high and suspect business culture. But that, what is it, London is the 5th biggest city in France or something? Yes. Well, they're not here for charity, are they? They're here because they have a better chance. I just want our children to actually benefit from a better business society. And it's not about being better as business. It's about being valued as business.
From your speech today at our lunch, it became very clear that you think that there are certain myths that we need to bust, and possibly we should bust during this the run-up to this election in order to get the right person into number 10. And one of them was that business is always, you know, the bad guys. The other one was the NHS. You firmly believe that the NHS needs to be restructured, that it is a system that was set up at a different time for different needs.
Absolutely. I don't understand why an NHS that is free at the point of delivery, which everybody of the 64 million in this country must believe, I don't understand why that is an inconsistent, apparently, view with changing the way you deliver that. And the problem is it's become polemic, it's become divisive, it's almost become tribal. So if you have a system, for instance, where you can deliver that much output at that much cost, and the taxpayer's paying that, and instead of that, you could deliver it so you get that much output at that much cost, but by the way, somebody makes a profit. What's wrong with that? I just don't understand what's wrong with that. Now, I'm told by a lot of people, oh no, no one can make a profit out of the NHS, and therefore it's tribal. And it is so upsetting because the business model is bust. You know, we have got kids being born today who'll be alive in 100 years' time. We've got people who are in their 90s who have got dementia and Alzheimer's. They're going to physically live for a long time, but cost a fortune to look after. Now, the world can't go on. You could actually give the entire GDP of this country to the NHS in 10 years' time, and it wouldn't be enough. And for some politician to insult my intelligence by telling me 2 million quid fixes this, and someone else says, oh, I'll trump you, I'll give them 4 billion, and someone else says, no, let's make it 8 billion. It's all absolute moonshine. This needs root and branch change, and some of it has got to be privatised, you bet it has. Some of it has just got to be changed in the way they deliver it. And I think those politicians talking about this are right, you've got to bring certain elements of social care into the mix so that you keep people out of hospitals. If you've got, what other business on earth, what other way of delivering anything to anybody would say, I'll tell you what, I'm going to pay you more and ask you to do less. They're called GPs. And then people say, but I can't get an appointment to the GP. Now, if these people had a cleaner, and their cleaner was doing 4 hours for that much money, and you turned around and said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you more money and only want you to do 3 hours, and your house is dirty, everybody knows what they'd do. So why is it different in the NHS? And it's become this unspoken thing. It's become this...
It's taboo. It's taboo. You cannot
can't
say the truth.
anything.
Do you think any of the parties going into the election are ready to say that?
No, I don't. I think they're all for it. And you know, in the British public, whenever you do a poll about what's the great things about Britain, they talk about freedom of speech, they talk about the rule of law, they might call it different things, but that's what they mean, and they'll talk about the NHS. Well, it's got so ingrained in the DNA of the nation, you touch it at your peril. But the problem is, we are going to run out of money. And it's not, the crying shame is it's no one's fault. You know, this isn't about...
It's demographics.
It's demographics. And well, it's two things. It's demographics, and it's also the cost of the thing. It's not just about the numbers you're putting across it. It's also the things in there are costing more money.
Finally, one of the things that we discussed was what a politician could say to business to make them stand up and applaud. And you said it would be if we ensured them an educated class of interns.
If you say to any businessman or woman, of the smallest business in Britain and the largest, what's your greatest challenge? They will moan about, rightly, I don't decry this, but they'll moan about taxation, they'll moan about regulation, they'll moan about who might get into number 10 or not. And they're all valid arguments. They'll moan about whether they can get their goods to market and their people to work with the transport system. But the biggest thing they all say, I can't get enough skilled people. And in a world where the only currency that matters in the 21st century in a developed nation isn't actually the Swiss franc or the euro, it isn't the dollar or the pound or the yen or the renminbi or the rupee, it's actually the development, the transfer and the exploitation of knowledge. Only knowledge adds you real value. Only knowledge and skill allow you to reform anything because people actually feel they can cope. And in a world where China wants your lunch and India wants your dinner, you're not going to succeed if you rely on price. You've got to add value. Therefore, you need more and better skilled people. To do that, you need an education system that makes sure they can read, write and count and operate a computer. You need a workforce in both the public and private sector, actually, that is better skilled. And if politicians could do one thing for business, stand up and say, in a scholastic generation, 11 years, 5 to 16, in a scholastic generation, we will cure illiteracy and innumeracy in schools, medical condition absent. Obviously, there are different things there. But the average person who at this moment, at 16, cannot read to the standard expected of an 11-year-old, and by the way, that's half the people who leave school at 16. Half. If it wasn't so disgraceful, it'd be funny. But if the first politician that's up, this is what I'll do, should have businesses vote in their pocket, because nothing is more important.
Thank you so much, Lord Jones.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.